Kristen.
And I'm Bethany.
And this is Looking for the Middle,
the Christian girl's guide to modern dating.
We're here to help you date with confidence while honoring the Lord and to show you that your identity and contentment are in Christ. We're going to give you the tools that you need to date successfully and be set up well for success in a godly marriage.
If you've ever felt like you didn't really belong with any of the extremes in dating today, well, you're not alone. Neither did we. And that's why we're here looking for the middle.
Hello, friends. Welcome to another episode of Looking for the Middle. We are pumped for this episode because this is our third time doing this, or fourth?
Third. I think.
So this was a something. Good job, Kristen. Words are hard. This is what we have deemed our question episode, which is where we ask y'all, our listeners, a question on Instagram, for those of you who are following us over there, and y'all get to answer a common question that we hear, whether from our listeners or just in dating conversations in general, and y'all's answers dictate the content of the episode. So this is something we've loved doing the past 2 seasons, and so this is no different. It's going to be fun. But before we jump in, y'all know the drill. If you have not signed up for our newsletter yet, that is now working. You should go do that because we are officially in Hallmark Movie of the Week with all the holiday movies, which, if for nothing else, you just get a holiday movie recommendation. There are a lot of other fun things in the newsletter too, but you can do that by going to our website, lookingforthemiddle.com, or going to our Instagram bio. At LFTM_podcast is our Instagram handle. There's a button in the bio where you can sign up for the newsletter. And also, it's a good time for you to follow us on Instagram because moving forward, you'll get to participate in stuff like this where you get to give us your answers to our questions. And we do this specific episode, but there are a lot of times we'll go on stories and ask for y'all's feedback as we're planning episodes. And so if you're not following us on Instagram, you don't get the chance to contribute. So go follow us on Instagram. Yes. That way you get to give us your thoughts, opinions, all the things.
These always end up being one of my favorite episodes of the season.
Oh, 100%.
It's like, we're all in this together. Like that kind of feeling.
It's very like unifying.
Yeah, it is.
Yes. And then the last thing, we are getting closer and closer to Christmas, which means we are getting closer to the 12 days of Couchcast, where from, I believe, the 13th of December through Christmas Eve, we will be releasing a Couchcast episode every single day. Y'all loved when we did this last year. We're going to do it again this year. Yes, we loved it. It was super fun. So this is like our final call for questions before we wrap up recording. So if you have a question you would like us to answer, you can go submit your Couchcast question again at the link in our Instagram bio. There's a button for that. And if your question doesn't get selected for the 12 days of Couchcast, we have a running list that we will pull from in seasons to come. So don't worry if your question doesn't show up in this particular set. We would hopefully, we'll get to it. So Bethany.
Yes.
Question of the day.
Okay.
I'm ready.
What is on your keychain besides keys?
Oh, hold on. Can I pull my keys out?
Yes, that is allowed.
Okay, I have mine on one of those
carabiner.
A what?
Carabiner.
Is that what it's called? I never knew what it was called. The little hook things that people like.
You rock climb with.
Yes, which is hilarious because y'all imagine me rock climbing. No. Okay, I have my car keys. You didn't ask for keys. I have it's a leather stamped fit keychain thing that has ATL on it.
Oh, okay.
Ferrently, and I got that at a work event. I have I don't know if I should say this on. That's not inappropriate. I just have a key fob. I have 2 key fobs, one to my current office and one to my old church that I used to work at that they never took back.
Kristen!
And so now when my mentors, still work there, so I can let myself in the side door and I don't have to call the receptionist. It's really a convenience thing for them, so they don't have to worry about me.
That's hilarious.
But they never took it back after I stopped working there. I have a keychain that Lindsay gave me that has a friend's quote on it. On one side it says, "When the rain starts to pour," and then it says, "I'll be there for you" on the other side.
That's so cute.
And then the last thing is it was actually on a necklace and I took it off because it looked more like a keychain, but it has part of Proverbs 31:25 on it. Oh, yeah. And then it says Knights 2020, which was my middle school girls basketball team my first year. They got it engraved for me.
That's really cute.
Yeah, so I put that on there. Everything else is just keys. I just got rid of my apartment keys because y'all know I moved. And with my parents, which will... thoughts and prayers would be appreciated. It's only temporary, I promise. But I had like my mail key, my apartment key, and then my little gate clicker thing, and my keys feel so light now that that's not on there. So I'm not really used to it. Yes.
Gone.
Yes. If you hear my keys jingling, I'm literally holding them. Okay, now Bethany's going over hers.
I got my keys out too. Okay, so
Bethany has a weapon.
I do have a weapon. Y'all. We'll put it in the newsletter. A link to this.
That's brilliant.
Keychain Knife. It is compact. It is
subtle.
It's very subtle, and I was gonna say effective, but I haven't ever used it, so I would assume it would be effective. But this little thing has been through. You can take it into any sporting event where they're checking first. I mean, it's on your keys. It just looks like part of your keys. It has been through security to and from New York.
Like in the Atlanta airport, you got through security with
times.
that? Well, that's a little concerning.
Accidentally. Like I wasn't I mean, I forget about it because it's just my keys. And so I throw my keys in my purse, and purse goes through the metal detector. And then I got home. Maybe it was when we went to Houston. I don't remember what it was.
It was because I remember you thinking like, oh my gosh, I got through with my knife.
Okay. So I don't think about it. I just drop it in and it's my keys. But yeah, I got home and realized this was in my carry-on bag. And I was like, and I was like, wait, that means it made it through security here, security there, whatever. So it's a great self-defense thing. I have one of those like braided cord things that you put on your keys, for survival if you need it. So then I have a Kroger card, card to my gym, and a library card.
Oh, look at you. So well-rounded.
Those are my keys.
Well, there you go. That's a good question.
I thought that was a fun one.
That is
easy
fun.
And yeah.
I don't have to think. I just have to look at...
You gotta know where your keys are.
Yeah, which is half the battle. Oh my gosh.
Oh man, that's funny. Okay, so... to set up today's episode in detail a little bit more of what we're talking about, we asked today's question, the theme is what it's like being single in church. And so we asked this question from two vantage points. I asked first on stories, if you remember, I wanted to know what is the hardest part about being single in the church? Because I think we have reached a point in the church here in the U.S. where the number of single people over 25, let's say, is much larger than it probably ever has been. And so it's a new frontier. And I think sometimes, as with a lot of things, like in just the church at large, it's slow in changing. It's slow in like adapting to some things, which is good in a lot of that's good in a lot of ways. But I think we're kind of at a place where it's like, okay, I don't know if the church always knows what to do with us, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because it is new. And so there are lots of people who deal with a lot of things that no one else ever really has in the church as much as being an older single person. People have dealt with these things for years. I'm not downplaying that. A lot of times in today's world, you hear people talking about like, no one has struggled like this or no one has ever struggled like that. And I'm like, okay, let's not be...
There's nothing new under the sun.
Exactly. And so we're not trying to do that. We're just saying this is a kind of a unique situation in that there is a large group of people who are single, who are older in the church. So we asked, what's the hardest part about that? But with anything, if we had left it at that and made this episode, what's the hardest part about being single in the church? All of those things would have been true. All of those responses are true. They're accurate information. But if that is what we painted the full experience of being single in the church as, I don't think that would be fair because we're only focusing on part of it. And I think to paint an accurate picture of what is it like being single in the church, you have to really ask a full question. And so we followed it up with, okay, so now tell us what are some good things about being single in the church. It doesn't negate the others. It doesn't make them non-existent. But in order to accurately portray the facts, we need all of them, I think. And so that's what we were attempting to do, is to ask this from both sides. And so now we're going to kind of go through the responses and talk through some of these things, because as always, there were definite themes throughout both the bad and the good. More so with the good, I think. Like, it was very, very clear lines of what those things are. So we're going to talk through them. We're going to, you know, sprinkle in our own experiences and our own thoughts of like, hey, this is really hard for me, or this is really good for me, and go from there. We're going to start with the bad and end with the good, because I think we have done the opposite several times this season already. We've started with the good and then belabored the bad points. So we're going to start with the hardest part about being single in the church. What is our first, you know, grouping of answers or category or whatever you want to call it?
Yeah. So the first category was the overwhelming front runner, which was that a lot of people talked about how they didn't feel like they really fit anywhere in the church, or they had a lot of trouble finding community with people who were in their same age group and life stage. And I think being single is a life stage that's harder to relate to when you're in different ages, I think, because like when you could have a couple who they're in their early 30s and they have a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old, and you could have a couple who's in their early to mid 20s with a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old, and it's like, okay, well, age doesn't really matter because we're going through the exact same stuff. We're in preschool, we're doing this, we're potty training, we're, you know, whatever. And I don't know if they've like, even if they've been married around the same time, the relatability, whereas when you're single and you've got a 22-year-old who's single,
just out of college.
Yeah. And their whole, you know, 20s ahead of them, and they're, you know, getting their first big job and whatever. And then you've got somebody who's 32, who's been single for a while, who is on their own, got their rhythms, all this stuff. It's completely different.
It's very.
And then the dating pool and the dating experiences and the dating methods
like just the
are
way
very
you go about
different.
It is very different.
And so I feel like, and again, we're not married, so I don't know exactly what it's like to be a married person, but I have married friends, and I've watched other married people relate, and it is a little tougher, and from what I've seen, when you're single and you're different ages than when you're married in different ages, if the other parts of your life are similar. And so I get that, like, you get into a church and you're in your late 20s, early 30s, or mid 30s, or late 30s, or early 40s, or whatever, and you're single, and it feels like the only single people, like, that was literally one of the responses, was everyone in my church is married except school-aged kids and teenagers.
Yeah.
And you don't have anything in common with them when you're, you know, single in your whatever age group.
Well, and I feel like this is a tough one, because if you go to a smaller church, the number of other single people is not going to be as high. So you're trying to forge that community with people who are in very different places, like that. School age kids or teenagers are the only ones in the same life stage as you are. But on the other hand, if you go to a huge church, there's going to be a lot more single people, but being able to really build community is going to be tougher because there's so many people.
Yeah.
And so,
well, and I
think it's an issue in big churches and small churches, honestly.
Well, and even from the standpoint of, if you're at a bigger church and there are a lot of single people, you probably don't know that, because you're not even able to talk to, like, to get to know everybody. And so at least if you're in a small church, you're like, oh, I know Bobby and Susie Q are both single. And then there's me. Whereas you go into a big church and you could have 4 single people in your section and you have no idea because of the environment. So that's what gets tough. And then, some responses, again, this was kind of a wide category, keeping some different, sub themes or whatever. But we had, people saying, like, I walk in alone and I sit by myself, and that's super hard to come in and know that I don't have a family to sit with. I don't have community to sit with. And
I get that.
Yeah. And I applaud people who do that, because I know that was like, that's been hard for me, of like, yes, I'm an introvert and I don't want to talk to people, but then at the same time, it's not that I don't want to talk to people. That was harsh. But there's something special about going into church and knowing, like, oh, I'm going to sit with these people. We're going to go to lunch after and whatever. And you just, when you walk in and leave, you feel invisible. Another response that was really tough to read, this girl said, it's so hard having to find new friends to hang out with every time all the people in my friend group get married.
Yeah.
And
I think this one applied. The older once you're into your 30s, you know, I mean, because I've seen it, you know, there's this awkward, okay, do I figure out how to fit time in to my friends' schedules who are married, who have kids, who whatever, because you're not going to see them as much, because that, you know, obviously husband and kids are going to take precedence. I'm not faulting anyone. That's how it should be.
Right.
So it's like, okay, do I try to fit in with that and just keep going? Or am I going to start over and find all new friends?
Yeah.
That is, I get that
That's
one.
a tough one.
I read that one and I was like, oh, I can relate to that.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, this is, like I said, this was the overwhelming top theme of answers of it being the hardest thing. And because these question episodes are hard because it's more of when we get to the good parts of being single in the church, it'll be a little more like, yes, like this is a good thing to like challenge you to do or to do this. But when it comes to the hard parts, this is more of just like a, hey, we get it.
Sometimes
section.
It's just hard and we can't fix it.
I don't have an answer. Like I was talking to a couple girls in the high school small group that I lead, and both of them had people very close to them die yesterday.
On the same day?
Same day.
Oh, wow.
And it was the first time either of them had ever dealt with like somebody dying that they were really close to. And so they're asking all these questions of like, why does this have to happen? And this just doesn't seem fair. And like, if God's so great, then and I'm like, these are all valid questions. Like there's truth to, you know, encourage you in that. But, but I told them, I was like, there is no point that you get to where you're like, you have answers to these questions that like I have some answers, but even then it's like, I don't know. Like, I'm not God. I don't understand. And it kind of feels like that when we're going through this is like, I get it, but I don't always have a solution. And that's hard for me because I'm like, I want people to like not have to go through. So how do we fix it? And it's like, I can't fix all the world's problems, and Bethany can't either. But we can talk about it. And I think there is some comfort that comes with knowing that you're not alone if you're one of those people that's like, hey, I don't really know where I fit in my church. Well, hey, a lot of other women who wrote in feel the exact same way.
Two things I want to follow up to that with. One, it's kind of talking about, you said, I don't have answers, or I have some, but I'm not God. And that always makes me think of it's a Corrie ten Boom quote where she says, you can trust an unknown future to a known God. And I think that applies in the sudden death of a loved one. And it applies in I don't know where I fit in as a single person in my church. From the big to the small, that applies in that I don't have all the answers. I don't know why it's like this. I don't know why we're not all married. I don't know why it's hard for single people to be in the church. I don't know why there's not community. Like on and on and on. But I'm not God, but I know him. And I know who he is. I know what his character is. And as hard as that is, because I don't see him, I don't see, you know, a tangible thing, I know that is true. And this is where you speak truth to yourself and you say, you know what, I'm going to lean into those good parts that we're going to get to later.
Yeah.
And you run with that, and it won't eliminate the hard parts, but I think it lessens them because it keeps your focus off of yourself and onto other people, onto the Lord, onto serving him. And that's huge.
Yeah.
Second thing that I want to follow up with, and this is a little bit of a rabbit trail, but
we love rabbit trails.
Yes. And I haven't even told you about this yet.
Oh.
We got a message from, it may have been on Patreon. I don't remember now.
Okay.
I mean, I remember the message. I don't remember where I got it. Talking about, you know, you said that we have this community of other women who are all going through the same thing. And she asked the question of, have you guys ever thought about creating a Facebook group?
I saw that.
Did you see it? Okay.
I saw it.
For your people.
Yes.
Because they want to talk, you know, what are other people getting from this? And it build other people who are walking in that same place. So I'm putting it out there to you guys now. If we were to start something like that, I'd say it'd probably be the first of the year.
Yeah.
But if we were to do that, if you would be interested,
probably be the start of next season. So like February.
Okay, next season. Yeah,
so
true. Good call.
Yeah.
So we're not committing to anything before that. If we were to do that, would you be interested? And if you would, let us know so that we can like send us an email, shoot us a DM on Instagram, let us know, because it would take we're going to have to get it set up, make sure it's moderated well, and it is a helpful community for for everyone.
Yeah.
So if you're interested in that, let us know and we can start looking into that.
We can poll on Instagram too.
Oh, yeah. There you
and
go.
so if you're not following us on Instagram, you can go do that, and we'll try to do a couple of
There you
those
go.
over the next couple months and see
that
like what
sounds
kind of response we get. But I did see that,
You
and I
did.
was like, I
Okay,
wanted to
good.
talk to you about that. But that's so good. I thought
Okay.
it was a great idea.
Okay, so then are we good to move on to the next?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Yes.
Let's move on
Next
to the next
theme
here, which is, and this one makes me laugh because, oh, buddy, I have dealt with this one. I think that's why Kristen gave this one to me to talk about.
I was really just alternating because I
Okay.
was like, you started, so I'll take the first one. But then I also know I'm like, this worked out well because you were very passionate about talking about this.
Goodness. I have lived this. Multiple iterations of this.
Mm-hmm.
And it, to varying degrees, it's like, okay, well, you're single and they're single and you both love Jesus, get married. And it's like,
Is the recipe really that simple?
right. And you hear a lot of times, my pastor has said it, I'm sure yours has too, talking to single people of like, you just need to find someone else who loves Jesus and is serving the Lord and get married. And I get that. But I think there's an oversimplification there that in a way makes it more difficult for people trying to date, because there really is more to it than that. Like, look at the theological differences that run the gamut, but they love Jesus. And so I get what they're saying of like, who loves the Lord and is serving him, and you believe the same things, but they don't ever say that part.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's also the element of, I've realized that, you should be selfless and you can look past things. And what really truly matters is that you love the Lord. I get that. But there's an element of compatibility and common interests and just enjoying spending time with that person doing nothing that should factor in. And I think it gets downplayed a lot, maybe more than it should. And so it makes it difficult because then you think, okay, is there something wrong with me? Am I being too picky? This guy's great. He loves the Lord, but we drive each other crazy, or we're bored to death, or whatever. I think there's a balance there. Maybe you are being too picky, but then at the same time, if you don't enjoy spending time with that person, okay, that's okay. Like, you don't have to.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm
but I think you're right, because I'm sitting here thinking right now, I'm like, I've met people, I'm like, okay, well, you are professing to be a believer and I am too, and so we're gonna both end up in heaven, but oh my word, I can't stand to be around you, like,
yeah.
And so, like, just be blatantly honest, not even like in a dating context,
Right.
just like, we all have people, even though we're Christians, we're still people, like, we're still humans, and there are people that just grind your gears.
Yeah.
And so
you work on it and you're patient and you're kind and whatever, but you don't have to want to marry that person.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There's so much more to it than that.
There is. And I understand, like, I feel like this one in a way goes with that first theme of you don't really fit in a lot of times with any group. And so all the married people are like, here, let's get you married and then you can be part of our group.
Yeah.
Oh,
It's like initiation.
They don't think it that way.
No.
And I'm not making a bigger deal out of something than it is, but I think there's this like, oh, well, I'm happy. We're married. Let's get them married. And I appreciate it sometimes. But going to like you guys' specific answers, we have anytime I talk to a guy my age at church, people assume we're a thing. And I mean, if I had a nickel for every time I talked to a guy and later someone came up to me and said, oh, I saw you talking to so-and-so. Is that a thing? I'm like, no.
We were talking
just having a
about Chick-fil-A
conversation, like,
or football or something.
Like, now, if you see that I've talked to that person every spare moment, every week, every whatever, okay, then that warrants something. But a conversation does not.
Well, because I would never go walk up to a married woman who is having a conversation with another married guy and be like, are you having an affair?
Cheating on your husband?
Yeah, no. I'd be like, y'all are probably chatting because your, husband went to the bathroom and his wife went to go pick up the kids out of the nursery. Like, I'm not going to make those, like, that's a far leap.
And it's the same.
Yeah, but it's the exact same thing. It's like, oh, you said words to someone else who's not married. Like, are y'all getting married soon?
Yes.
I'm being so sarcastic, but I'm just like,
I mean, it's almost like when you're single, just speaking to someone of the opposite sex implies intense attraction and, compatibility, and you're getting married. And then yet somehow once you're married, that completely turns off. Like,
Oh,
you can
yeah.
talk, it's never.
You can talk to anybody you want and no one guesses anything because you have your person already. And I'm like, do y'all really think? And I don't know if it's a misconception of like, oh, single people view every single
That's what I was getting at.
conversation
Exactly.
as like I could marry this person. We talked today. No, like, that's not how that works.
That's why you have all the jokes and all the memes and all the stuff
Yeah.
making fun of Christians. It's
Oh.
really Christians making fun of other Christians saying,
Yeah.
oh, we talked today, we're probably getting married. That's where this comes from
Yeah.
because it puts this idea in your head. If people are always asking you, it puts this idea in your head of, oh, was there more to that conversation?
Yeah.
Oh, was he interested?
Was he flirting?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's one. Someone else said, all the lovely old people trying to set me up with every non-married guy that walks through the door.
Whew, yeah,
Yep.
I get that.
I do too. It happens.
Yeah.
And on the one hand, it's endearing. There's a part of it that I'm
Yes.
like, you know, that is when someone calls or when I talk to them, they're like, oh, I thought of you.
Yeah.
And so, or I thought, like, I'm like, thank you.
Yes.
For
thinking
I
of
would
me.
rather be thought of than never
Than just, forgotten and invisible.
never thought of, as far as like, oh, we really should find someone for Bobby here. Who could it be? And
Yeah.
well, you know,
Yeah.
I'd rather be thought of. But at the same time,
Yeah.
I don't
sums
know.
it up.
Yeah, you all understand.
Yeah.
It is endearing, and that I appreciate that people want good for me, and this is what they deem as being a good thing, and I do. I mean, I do too. I
Yeah.
want to get married. I'm
Right.
just saying, I appreciate it, but it can be like,
Yeah.
really, every guy that walks through the door, like
Yeah.
everyone, and they're like, well, I know he's blank, but you could get over it, or I know he's this.
Yeah. It's
It'll
like
be
the
fine.
justifications.
And I'm like, it's okay if we don't get married. It's
yeah.
fine.
Yeah.
Like,
Exactly.
anyway, so there's that, and then someone else said, people constantly giving me dating advice or asking if I'm seeing someone, and this one can be frustrating. It's like, well, you're not dating someone, so you must be bad at it.
Yeah.
It's kind of like what the assumption
Yeah.
is, or there must be something wrong with you, or someone would want to date you, so here, let me help you.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, that's not always. It might sometimes be the case.
Yeah.
That's not always the case.
Right.
Like, you know, that may be that, hey, here's this blind spot that if you fixed, it might help. Like, if you weren't so awkward on a first date, or if you didn't do this thing or that thing or whatever, it might help. And
Yeah.
that's across the board. Guys, girls,
Yeah.
both.
Yeah. Something when I was having that conversation with those two high school girls last night, there was a third high school girl in there who her mom died 3 years ago.
Oh, wow.
They have no cause of death. Like, she just dropped
Was her
it.
time.
Yeah.
Wow.
So she was in there being
Yeah.
like, and if anybody was going to be in there, I'm like, this is a great person for you to talk to because she's walked
Seriously, though.
through this. But in the middle of the conversation, she looked at one of the girls and she said, do you want us to listen or do you want advice? And I'm like, that is a question we should all be asking more of when someone wants to talk. Like,
Yeah.
do you want me to listen or do you want my advice? And
that is so applicable in
yeah.
dating
And it's like,
conversation.
because a lot of times when we're dealing with dating crap, we just want somebody to listen and be like, hey, I'm really sorry. That sucks. Or like, that does sound really hard. Or like,
Yeah.
I feel for you. Something.
Because we know the things to do. We
Yeah.
know we'll get over it. We know it won't always be this bad. We know all of those things, but in the moment, sometimes you just need someone to say, I'm really sorry you're going through
Yeah.
this. And I wish I could fix it, but I can't. Because that's the thing. We know you can't fix it. We can't
Yeah.
fix it ourselves. And so, yeah, that goes such a long way.
Yeah.
And but it applies in so many other arenas too.
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. I think that's just I was like, wow, I will be asking that question more often
Yeah.
instead of me being like, well, let me tell you the 4 steps you need
Right?
to take to fix your problem. It's like, do you want me to just listen or do you want advice?
Yeah. Well, and I think a lot of times too, in whether it's dating or other things, you know, because I do this and I am more conscious of it now, of like when someone says, oh, XYZ thing happened. And so my response is, oh my word, I went through the same thing. Let me tell you about it.
Yeah.
Which is my way of saying, I understand.
Right.
But it can easily come off as like almost trying to one up someone. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Or
yeah.
turn the conversation to you. And so I think instead of like, that's such a great way to segue into that of like, oh my word, do you want me to just like hear you and like listen and whatever? Or do you want advice or help? Because I've been through the same thing, but I don't want to come across as a know-it-all. I don't want to come across as trying to like steal your thunder. Like,
Yeah.
That's a really great response
Yeah.
to that.
Yeah. And I think that the one last thing I'll say about this before we move on, if you don't feel close enough to the person to ask that question, then you probably shouldn't be giving advice in the first place.
Very good point.
Just a filter to think through. If you're close enough where you can be like, do you want me to just listen or do you want advice? And you've got that kind of relationship, that's great. If you were like, oh, well, we don't really feel that close for me to ask that, then you don't need to be giving advice. You just need to default to listening.
Yeah, there's your answer.
And there's your answer.
Yeah.
So just keep that in mind.
Very good point.
All right. Another theme. This one really hit home for me personally, was that one of the toughest things about being single in the church is watching so many people live the life you want. When you're single and walking into church, I think at one point, it may be under another category, but one girl said, she's like, church feels like a family event.
It does.
And so when you walk in as a single person and you see, another woman, particularly when she could be your age, she could be younger, and she's walking in with her husband and her kid or two kids or whatever.
Yeah.
And they're, laughing and they're worshiping together and all this stuff. And it's like, gosh, I want that so bad.
Yeah.
And then multiply that by however many, married people are sitting in church with you. It's everywhere.
Yeah.
And so a couple of these responses, I've thought all of these things. One girl said, it's really hard to be joyful for others when I feel sad and not hopeful.
Yeah.
And then another girl said, she's like, it's really hard not to get resentful or jaded when I feel like everybody else is getting what I want. Y'all, if you knew the number of times I prayed, Lord, if one more person, I'm like, I've been asking for this and everybody else seems to be getting it. So what am I missing? That's a tough thing to feel. And then another girl said, it's tough to see all the married couples worship together and to desire that. And because I think, I'm not downplaying, obviously we want to be married and we want to have, kids and have a family and whatever. Mm-hmm. But there is something to be said for this desire to have that kind of a spiritual intimacy with another human being that you will only have with your spouse.
Yeah.
When you become one with your spouse, you unite in every single way. Mm-hmm. And that includes, sharing. I mean, obviously you have your own walk with the Lord. I'm not saying it melds together, but share your faith with that person, and you walk through the seasons of life together. You pray together, you worship together, you study together. And there's something so special about that. And then, that's something else I think that's not the first thing that pops into our head when we say oh yeah, here's all the married people and their children and they all look so happy. But it's I want that spiritual and emotional connection too, not just the physical representation of what a family is, if that makes sense.
No, it totally does. And it's interesting to me, because we talked at the beginning about how there are more single people in the church now than there really have been in the past, especially older single people. And based on the responses we get, that would really seem to be it confirms that. And I don't think that's really in question. I think it's a pretty well-known thing. But isn't it interesting how there's so many more people and yet they still feel lonely, or they feel more lonely. Just as you were talking, that was kind of what was going through my head. But at the same time, I'm like, but I get it. Because I personally am at a church where there's a pretty good size group of single people. And they're my friends. We do stuff. But at the same time, I identify with all of these things. And it goes to what you're saying. It's different. Mm-hmm. You want that companionship and that relationship that you don't have with your friends. It's totally different. Yeah. It'd be very inappropriate if that was with your friend.
Yeah.
And I don't mean sexually. I just mean that emotional intimacy is not appropriate. And so the irony of that is just interesting to me. And I'm not sitting here to offer a solution to it. I'm just saying I can relate to both of those things.
Yeah. Well, because I even think about when Mel got married. Uh-huh. And I mean, other than somebody in my family, I was closer to Mel than anyone. Still ain't. Very close to her. We're not fighting.
Yeah,
everything's fine. Everything's great. That made it sound awful. But I remember her getting married, and there was this little part of me that was like, oh, she's because I think she called Trey her best friend or whatever. And I was like,
oh, wait.
Oh, man. And like, I know I'm still her best friend in the sense of like her best girlfriend, but like, I want her husband to be her best friend.
Exactly.
And so there's this weird tension of like, oh, but you're going to connect with somebody in a way that I can't give you. Not that I want to, but like, it's going
right and good.
Yes. And this should be the closest earthly relationship you have. Mm-hmm. But it's tough when you're like, oh, well, you're going to go get that. And then I'm like, I'm still here. And like, I still want that.
Yeah.
And it's this tough, like, balance of very happy for you. Like that girl said, I want to be happy for other people. And I do think there is a desire. Like, we're not all, all single people aren't sitting around being bitter and giving side eyes to all the married people. We are happy for these people. Like,
100%.
We are like, and we want to be joyful for them and to celebrate them because we know it's good. That's why we want this so badly. Exactly. But it is a tough thing to hold in both hands. I'm happy for these people who are getting what I want, but I'm not getting it. And that's really hard. And so there's this, you're juggling it. Yeah. So it's tough.
I told someone not too long ago, we were just talking about being single and, wanting that type of relationship. And I said, honestly, I said, because I'm not the pie in the sky romantic ideals, like y'all know that by now. It's just not me. Mm-hmm. But I was telling him, I was like, I just want to be someone's like first choice. Like, because like you were saying, it is right and good for everyone. Like your husband is that, their person is that, and that is good. It's not taking away from it, but we don't have that. Mm-hmm. We're not that to someone.
Yeah.
And so you're always down the hierarchy.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good way to put it.
And I'm not saying it should be different. I want to really like drive
that home. Yeah.
We're just stating the facts.
Yeah.
And that's a hard place to be, even if it's how it should be. Like it's still.
That's a good way to put it.
Even
if it's how it should be, it's still a tough place to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. All right. Well, I don't want to speak for you. Was that all you had for now? Okay,
no,
great.
I'm good. Yeah,
Me
go
too.
ahead.
No, moving on.
That's all I had. So let's move on to the next theme here where we've got this one and one more on the hard parts. And then I promise we'll get to the good stuff. So the next theme we saw was that this one really goes hand in hand with several of the others, but specifically lots of events at the church are for families or couples, but there aren't as many singles events, which I think can be for a lot of reasons. Maybe there aren't as many single people. Again, okay, that's fine, but it's still kind of a tough place to be because then you have to insert yourself into one of those others if you want to go to anything, or you just don't.
Yeah.
And so that it kind of makes that community part of church or being part of the body, it makes it a little difficult because you're like, okay, I'm trying, but there's not really anything.
Yeah.
And like I'm like, well, okay, get involved in a small group. Like, especially if it's like at our church, our small groups are not like, oh, the 20 somethings and the high school girls and the high school boys. They're more location based. So you find one that's close and a good time for you. And then it's there'd be grandparents there and high school kids and like, which I really like. I think it's really great, but you go to that and it's like, unless there are several other single people there, one, either everyone's going to try to set you up or they feel bad for you. Oh, it's okay. You'll find someone, or all the moms are talking about stuff and all the dads are talking about stuff and the kids are doing, and you're still kind of like,
what do I do? What do I say?
And so obviously, the natural gravitation that you will have is towards the wives and the moms. Like that's who you're going to go talk with. And in my experience, I'm not going to say it's always like this. In my experience, it becomes, they're having this conversation that you can't really chip into because you don't have kids, you don't have whatever. But then also they're telling you, oh, you'll know what we mean one day, which I appreciate the acknowledgement of, oh, hey, she's different than we are. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, it kind of puts, for me, this is me, I'm just talking about me personally here. It kind of puts up a barrier of, you don't understand our conversation. And so I feel weird interjecting, which I know is a me issue to an extent too. Like I need to work on that, but it's just difficult even in that situation.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I don't really have any. I was like, I agree to all of the above. And I mean, one girl wrote in, the hardest part about being single in church. She said family days are tough because no one in my family goes to my church. Because that's the other thing that, like, a lot of times, and maybe this is location based, but like Atlanta and the surrounding cities are very transient. Like people come here, they move here. I mean, even when I went to a small-ish, it's not super small, but like it was a private school. I was one of, I think, 2 or 3 kids in my entire graduating class where both my parents are born and raised in Georgia.
Yeah, neither of mine were.
Yeah.
They moved here when I was 1, 2, something like that. So I'm from here, but we're definitely, you're way in the minority. And even it's like, oh, you're like from here.
Yeah, because even like my parents are from here, my grandparents, all my grandparents were born and raised here.
That's very
which
uncommon.
Is super rare. And so a lot of times when you find single people in the church, it's especially the closer you get to Atlanta, the more it's, I moved here for work, I moved here for school, and then I stayed after or whatever. And so their families aren't there. So when you have a family function, they are their family. Like they are the one unit. And so it's tough to, again, and you want to go to these things. It's not like you want to stay home all the time and just show up on Sunday mornings and then leave. But at the same time, it feels different because you're like, I don't have a group with me. So I get that.
I do too.
All right. The last tough theme, then we'll move on to positive things. And I combined 2 answers. It wasn't a huge theme, but this is one that really resonated with me and Bethany. And so I feel like a lot of people, it will resonate with you listening. But they said it's tough having your stress or busyness one-upped by married people. Like, oh, well, you don't have kids, or you don't, like, not that they say it like that. I'm being sassy, but feeling like, oh, you're busy and you're stressed, but it couldn't possibly be as bad as if you were busy and stressed with, 3 kids and a husband. Or people assuming you're not stressed and have a bunch of free time because you're single.
So then you can help them with all their stress.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think this is where we have to realize, like, everybody's stressed.
Yeah.
Everybody, not all the time, hopefully, but everybody goes through.
I think everyone is at some level. It's just a matter of how much.
Yeah, that's true. Everybody's got stuff on their mind. Everybody has deadlines, commitments, busy schedules, and it may be a different type of busyness, but there isn't one greater or lesser than the other because of your stage of life. And so I think this one really hit with me. This was something when I worked at my old church, which was a very large church. They did a whole, it actually ended up being really depressing. It wasn't, but they did a singles breakfast before our all staff meeting. Okay. So all the single people on staff came and they fed us breakfast.
Okay.
And then they had a panel where they talked about like what it was like being single on staff and had different single people at different age groups.
Okay.
And I felt so depressed when I left. Like it was really, but basically it came down to like, it was way harder to find work-life balance as a single person because on your team, you could stay a little late,
feel
right?
Bad,
yeah.
Not because you're like, well, they have kids. Like,
I'll go to this event. I'll work late. I'll do this.
Agree.
I'll take this off your plate. I'll do this.
Yep.
I'll go take this home with me because I'm not having to go home and cook dinner for a family and then, help the kids with homework and whatever. It's like, I'm just going home to, my puppy and my Netflix. But it's like that just because like that's what you're going home to, like you need that time to rest. You don't need to feel like you've got to fill it to, just because you're single with things that, everybody's busy.
Yeah.
And everybody's got stuff on their plate. And so,
well, yeah. And that's, because I've had this happen before of like, oh, I've really got to do I got to go because I got to go do such and such with the kids. So I was hoping you could I didn't get to that. I was hoping you could do X, Y, Z. And it's like, well, what do you say? Oh, well, no, I got a tub of ice cream and a movie waiting on me at home. Like,
I have plans with Ben and Jerry and Mark Blucas.
Yes. You feel bad. And I don't think people do it from a manipulative place most of the time.
Not at all.
But yeah, I totally get that. You feel obligated. Well, it feels selfish. To not do it.
It does.
Whatever it is they're
That's
asking.
a great point.
It feels selfish because it's not affecting anyone but you, and you were wanting to do whatever it is you were wanting to do, but it's not that important, you know? So I totally get that.
Yes.
Yeah, we have a joke at our church amongst, I said there's a big group of single people, or bigger. And so we have a joke, you hear that someone's moving and we're like, great, we better find out when, because they're going to want us to come move all their stuff.
Yeah.
And it's a joke because for a while there, it was like every other weekend, it seemed like someone was moving and they wanted, the single people to come move the stuff, all the, young guys with muscles and whatever.
Right.
And it got to a point where I think we were a little bitter for a while. We were like, okay, no, we're not just sitting around doing nothing and we can just come move everyone.
Right.
And it tapered off, and it's just kind of a joke now, but it's kind of the same thing of like just this assumption that, oh, well, you don't have anything else going on here.
Yeah.
Come
move boxes.
Yeah.
Put my couch on the back of this truck.
Yep. Pretty
Please
much.
and thank you.
Oh man. Okay, guys. So we have, I don't know how long we have been going. I don't know how long this is at this point. I don't even want to know. I don't think.
I was about to say, I could tell you.
No, don't. But we are going to transition to the good things about being single in the church. So take everything we have just talked about, internalize it, relate to it, whatever. But now let's focus on the good. And I think focusing on these good things more, like I think I said this earlier, will help keep the hard parts in perspective, but it will also lessen the burden of them if you're focused on the good things that you have. Like Kristen always says, we focus so much on the bad parts of our current season and the good parts of another one. So let's flip that script a little and let's focus on the good parts of this season we're in. And so
preach it.
The first thing we're going to talk about, and this one again was overwhelmingly the top answer, which is so encouraging. Like, I'm like, good for you girls. Like, good. People said time and time and time again, I have more time and more opportunity to serve. I can get involved somewhere. I can, serve in ways that I wouldn't. I can serve at the last minute. I have time to do several different things. People say, one girl said, I have the time to participate in several different ministries and mentor teen girls. I have the flexibility to serve more easily, is what one girl said. I can stay late and I can arrive early for events, someone else said. And so that was overwhelmingly the number one answer. And I think that's so great that your first thought is, what can I do for other people? That's the best part about being single in the church, is that I can help other people. And I think that's exactly how it should be. That is the Christ-like response to the season you're in, of saying, okay, well, God has placed me in this place. What can I do? How can I serve? How can I be the hands and feet of Jesus to other people? And that is so good. And I think the benefit to you in that is, one, you are learning to be selfless, which will help you immeasurably in marriage down the road. But at the same time, there is the benefit of, just from a very practical standpoint, you're busy doing things for other people, and your time is busy and your time is occupied. So you will have less time to sit around and feel sorry for yourself. I mean,
yeah,
that's
that tough love, but she is so right.
I mean, and I'm telling myself, like, I stay busy sometimes when it's like, ugh, this is really, I really don't want to be single right now. Okay, well, what can I do?
Yeah.
And what better way than to help other people?
Yeah. Well, and something happens, not to sound cheesy, but like in your soul when you serve. Like, there is your behavior, your mindset, the way you carry yourself, like your thought patterns, that has serving has an internal effect on you, just as much as it has an external effect on the people you're serving. And so, I mean, how many times do you hear people that go and do service projects or go on mission trips and they're like, I went to help these people, but really, like, God did a work in me. And that's exactly what's going to happen. And I love, like you said, that was such an overwhelming answer, because it shows like there is such a desire for single people to be involved and to be a part and to serve and to contribute to the body of Christ. And I love that.
Yeah. And it is. And I think that anytime you're being obedient to the Lord, like, he honors that, and he does it. Like you said, it changes your heart. It makes that something you want to do more. It makes it something that you think of first. And then the more you are doing that, the more you are becoming like Christ, which is what the ultimate goal is. So I just think that's so great.
Yeah, me too. Another, and this kind of goes with serving, but is a little bit different as far as good things about being single in the church is that you have more flexibility with attending events and church functions when you're single. And, you know, I think, hold on, I'm going to read the wrong ones. I loved some of these responses. One girl said, she's like, I can go eat with whoever I want after church. And
can I be real blunt here?
Yeah.
I put this on stories. You know, as soon as I put it out there, I was like, okay, well, what would I like? Because with anything, the hard parts, the bad parts,
come
rattling
super
off,
quick.
no problem. And
Right.
I was like, okay, well, what would be the good parts about being single in church? And the first thing that came to mind was like, I can go to lunch with whoever I want to after church.
Yeah.
Whenever I want to.
Yeah.
Or whenever I don't. Like,
and stay as long as I want.
Yeah.
And if we want to be there for 3 hours, we can. We're not
And then
getting
if we
back
wanna
for
go to a
nap
movie
time.
after that, we can. Or on and on it goes.
Yeah. And that showed up a lot. You know, I'm able to go to any and all church events. I have the freedom to be involved in a lot. I can go on mission trips. I can serve. I can do Bible studies. Or I can just go to events and not have to worry about childcare. I mean, I never thought through that until my friends started having kids. They're like, oh yeah, I can do that, but I have to get a babysitter. I'm like, oh.
Which suddenly makes things more expensive.
I can just leave. Like,
yep.
You know, date night all of a sudden becomes, like you said, a lot more expensive when you're paying for the dinner and whatever else you're doing, and you're paying a babysitter. And, you know, that was, like I said, just something that showed up. Or even I can stand around and chat after church as long as I want to. I'm not having to worry about anybody else. Nobody's waiting on me. And there's more time to spend in fellowship. And I think obviously this, you know, we just talked about how it's hard to find those people, but when you do find those people, having the flexibility and the freedom to, you know, stay an hour after the service and have a really good conversation. Because I think what is cool about when you're single is that who you talk to after church every week or who you go to lunch with is different. And so you're getting, you know, these different perspectives. You're building these different relationships. And yes, you can have really meaningful conversations after church when you're married. A lot of times they're going to be with your spouse, which is also really great and really awesome for your marriage. And so it's we don't think about that. We think, oh, well, she gets to go home. She gets to go to lunch with her husband. Well, you get to go to lunch with this person this day and this group this day. And you may learn something really great from this conversation. And you may, you know, be super encouraged by, you know, going to eat with these people or whatever. And there's still ways for God to fulfill those desires and meet those needs that you have, even if it's different in a different way than maybe you would prefer. And so
it's a very good point. Again,
this is where you shift that perspective of, okay, you know, right now you aren't going to lunch with your husband after church, but that doesn't mean you have to go eat alone. And you can stay, like you said, as long as you want, and go see a movie and get ice cream. And then by the time you're like, I'm home, it's 7:00 and it's dinner. Y'all want to go get dinner? Like, and it's just like, that's fun. And it's a part of, and that's something every married couple, I'm pretty sure without exception, has told me, like, enjoy the time you have. Whether they'll talk about it either when you're first married or even before you get married, and you're saying, like, you can just go do whatever the heck you want. Like, it's fun. Enjoy it.
Yeah.
And we're wishing it away, but we can enjoy it.
Another one that honestly I didn't think of. This one had not crossed my mind, but it came up enough that it's a theme. Like, we were like, oh wow, lots of people said this, is that I don't have to worry about my kids in the service. And it wasn't from a place of, phew, I do not have kids. It was from a place, like, so many answers were from a place of saying, you know, I can worship and I can focus and I can learn in this time where I'm single. That once I do have kids is going to be tough, because that's your first priority. So it's taking care of your kids, making sure, you know, if you just look around, someone said, you know, I watch my mama friends and I know it's hard. You know, you see that struggle, you see the distraction, the baby's crying, you know, you have to deal with this, you have to deal with that. And so I have thought before about, wow, like, I wonder when the last time they just heard a full sermon was.
Yeah.
And so that is something, you know, if we were doing this from the standpoint of moms, that would be something in there. This is a really hard part of being a mom at church.
Yeah.
You know, like it's hard for them. And so we can be grateful and see that as a good thing in our season of being able to say, you know what, I can actually listen to the sermon and I can have the word like poured into me, and I can make great strides in my spiritual walk, in my spiritual growth now that might be slow down for a time once there are small children, because they are going to really need that effort and you're going to be discipling them. And so if you think about it, soak that up now so that when you do have kids that you're going to be discipling and giving the gospel to, like, that's going to be you need to have a firm grasp on the gospel. You need to be living it out in your life. You need to have a firm grasp on all of these things so that when you know, your mom, I mean, dad too, but we're talking to women here.
Yeah.
When your mom, like, you're the one teaching them these things. They're not going to get it from anywhere else. You want to be that. So you need to be soaking that up in this time. And I think that's such a great observation. And then someone else said too, I don't have to worry about my kids disrupting the service.
Yes.
Which I'm like, that's
a great point.
I get that too.
Such a great point.
So yeah, I think that's a really good, I really liked that one.
Yeah, that's good. And well, and it kind of transitions into the next thing we wanted to talk about, which this was only said once, but this statement stuck out to me so much that I thought it was worth mentioning. And that if you are taking what Bethany just said, is this is a time where you get uninterrupted time to grow in your relationship with the Lord, really focus on, you know, getting in your Bible and working, you know, enriching your prayer life, like all these things that you can do right now without having to worry about if your kids are sitting still while the pastor's preaching. Then, you know, this, because you're able to soak in so much, this is also a great time for you to be able to pour out as well. And so this one girl said, she's like, I love that I get to be a role model for young girls and that I'm able to model a godly single life. And
which you go.
Yes.
Good for you.
This.
Like, I love that that's your mentality.
Yeah.
And I was a little I was like, oh, do I have that? Do I think of that?
Yeah.
Do I think of how can I model a godly single life? Or do I think of, this is really kind of sucky right now.
Yeah.
Like, which one is more prominent in my thinking?
Yeah.
And it was a little bit, so that was convicting for me. I will say
it was such a good answer. And Bethany and I were talking before we started recording about how so much of what we saw growing up in church were married women by the time they were our age now. We didn't really have models for godly single women in
not
their
as much.
not as
there
much.
There was one
okay.
in my
I know.
my life. And,
yeah.
you know, I've talked about her on here before.
Yeah.
She got married.
She 40s, 50s?
Late 40s.
Late 40s, 50s. Yeah.
But yeah, I saw that in her. And it has been such an encouragement.
Yeah.
And so I guess when I saw this, that's part of why it was so convicting. Because I'm like, I've seen the impact that has on someone that she probably doesn't even know. Like, I mean, she knows who I am. I'm saying she doesn't. She doesn't know the impact that had on me.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, okay, like, do I even take stock of that when I'm like, I could be doing that for someone else. And so it was just a good. I don't remember who wrote this in, but thank you.
Yeah, it was. It was such a good thing, and I think, like we've been talking about this whole episode, how the number of single people in the church is growing.
Yeah.
Are we modeling well what it looks like to be a single person following after Jesus? Even when we have this really significant unmet desire, do they still see joy in us? Do they still see compassion in us? Do they still see us serving with a good attitude and a good, like a willingness? And this was a good, like, check yourself moment. When I read this, was like, okay, what kind of example am I setting? Like, if there are girls in my church who are, you know, about to graduate high school or early college, are they thinking like, oh my gosh, if I don't get a ring by the time I graduate, then my whole life falls apart, which was me at one point? Or will they say like, oh, hey, like, I've seen Kristen walk this. And so if that's my story, like, I'm okay with that. Yeah. Or like, I've seen Bethany walk this, and like, if that's my story, I'm okay with that because I've seen like them do it well, and God honor them, God bless them, God fulfill them, God, you know, meet their needs and, you know, come through for them. And so I can trust that he's going to do the same for me, regardless of what the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years looks like, you know?
Yep.
So.
Okay. So then a couple we wanted to just mention, like honorable mentions. These didn't fit into a category. But they made us laugh.
Yes.
So we're going to tell you about them. So
Yes.
first one, someone said it is a whole lot easier to find a seat in the service by myself.
Yeah.
And I was like, you know, that is a very good point. She's
You're
like,
not
"Hey, is that
wrong."
seat saved? Because everyone leaves.
Yes.
Seats between. I'm like, I'll have one of those. Thank you.
Yes. This was a nightmare when I remember going to church when we were all growing up, because I'm one of 5. Well, you're one of 4. I'm one of 5.
Yeah.
And we had to have 7 seats when we got to church. And if we were late, you were up a creek. Like it was.
You were not sitting together.
No, you were in 2 rows, either right next to each other, and then the parents had to split up to make sure everybody behaved.
Yes.
And so it was always, I would get, and I'm so like, I want everybody to be happy and everybody
Right.
okay. And I'm like, Lord, please just give us a row. Like, please. And now it's like, I just walk in and be like, oh yeah,
There we go.
thanks. That works great. So I loved that. The other funny one, this has absolutely nothing to do with being single in the church.
Yeah.
It has a lot to do with being single. But I laughed so hard reading this. And Bethany and I have had a lot of laughs since we sat down today and had a whole conversation about
Yes.
it. But I just thought this was worth repeating. So this girl wrote, she's like, I don't have to share a bed with anyone. I can spread out. I can get a good night's rest, and I can wake up whenever I want to. And I was like, girl,
Yes.
yes. Like that is so, I have already decided when I get married, like I will have a king bed.
That's a deal breaker for me.
It is absolutely a
Yep,
non-negotiable.
absolutely.
Like I love to cuddle, okay, but I'm so hot-natured.
Leave me
I'm
alone.
like, we can cuddle for a few minutes. Okay, you get on your side, I'll get on mine. I need the fan going. Like, don't
And I don't
touch
want
me.
you talking and turning to like
Yes.
wake me up.
Yes, I'm like, I just want to lay here and sleep and just leave me alone. Because y'all, if I don't sleep, I'm not a good. Yeah. The faces Bethany is making right
I'm the
now.
same way though. Like,
Yeah, you don't
can
want to
relate.
be around me when I am sleep deprived and caffeine deprived.
I was gonna say if they happen both at the same, one or the other is okay.
Yeah.
But both together, I don't know that any of us are happy
No.
people to be around.
No. But I just loved that, like, this is what she
Yep.
shared. I was like, this, but it's so true.
Very.
Like, I mean,
Yep.
enjoy sleeping by yourself while you can. Because then I'm like, what if he snores?
That's one of your
That is like a huge fear.
Kristen's a very light sleeper.
Oh my gosh.
I-
I'm not a light sleeper.
It's getting to sleep.
It's getting to sleep.
Yeah.
And if you, snoring is my biggest pet. I get so irritated. So, like, I get in the worst mood. Y'all, my mom
can't
sleeps
help
with,
it.
no, they can't. My mom sleeps with earplugs
Oh,
because
that's
my dad
funny.
snores so bad. And I'm like, I don't want to sleep with earplugs the rest of my
Yeah,
life, which I know is selfish, but it's fine.
Yeah. I don't know. This is one of those things where you just think this is how it is for everyone, and I've learned as an adult, oh wait, no one else does this. I lay down to go to sleep, and I may look at my phone, or I may read, or I may whatever for a little bit, and then I'm like, okay, it's time to go to sleep. And I turn over, and I basically like tell my brain, okay, it's time to go to sleep. And I'm asleep in a
Wow,
couple
I
minutes.
envy you so much.
That's what, I just thought that's how people went to sleep. That's
Nope.
what you do. But apparently I am
You're an
very
alien.
much in the minority here. But yeah, I literally, it's funny, I sleep on one side really. And so I don't know if it's like a muscle memory thing or whatever, but if I lay on the other side, I'm fine. I'll stay awake. I can read, I can whatever. But if I flip over, lights out almost immediately.
I am so jealous. Maybe your husband is going to snore, and that's God just preparing you.
I'm
Like,
just
I
wrong.
created Bethany this certain way, knowing that her husband is going to snore so that she can fall asleep on
Just like
command.
that.
Oh,
So,
that's amazing.
yeah.
Oh, gosh. All right, guys. Well, we will wrap it there. That is all of our responses we have to share with you. This was like you said, these are some of my favorite because we get to hear from y'all. Like,
Yeah.
a lot. I mean, our content is based a lot on like what we hear from y'all and what we've gone through ourselves and just questions we've been asked over the years we've been doing this and the years before. But it's fun that y'all get to directly contribute to this.
Yeah.
And so it's always fun to hear what y'all have to say. So thank you if you submitted an answer. We are so, so grateful. I typed them all out last night
Yes,
in prep
she
for
did.
this. And Bethany was going to do one more call. And I'm like, please don't. Like, my fingers are hurting. We have plenty to go off of. So y'all gave a great response. So we really do appreciate it. And like I said, if you're not following us on Instagram, go ahead and do that at LFTM_podcast. And next time we have a question episode, you get to participate. So it'll be fun. But we'll be back soon for another episode with y'all. But until then, I'm Kristen.
And I'm Bethany.
And this is Looking for the Middle.